from Surah 49, verse 15. Let's all seek refuge in God from Satan the rejected. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Mu'mins, believers, are those who believe in God and His Messenger, then attain the status of having no doubt whatsoever, and strive with their money and their lives in the cause of God. These are the truthful ones. Say, are you informing God about your religion? God knows everything in the heavens and the earth. God is omniscient. So, subhanAllah, these verses are talking about the Arabs, whom God refers to as the worst in hypocrisy. So, they're not even submitters, let alone believers. And God says that they like to refer to themselves with their own tongues as believers. And God is telling us that this is not really something we should say. We should say we are submitters. It's good to refer to other people around you as believers if you want to encourage them and you want to have good thoughts about them and you want to encourage them and respect them. But to say that about yourself, it's just kind of portrays a bit of arrogance. And God's and we should be humble about ourselves, right? Also, and God says, that's something that comes with time, as you practice a religion, as you grow your soul, with growth of your soul. When I say with time, I mean just not just with time and how long you have been a submitter, but as you grow your soul, you work hard, you worship God, you grow your soul, and that's how God will give you certainty. And God knows who the believers are. So you don't need to tell anybody. You don't need to tell God you're a believer, first of all. What is the purpose of you telling people you're a believer, right? So we should just say we're submitters until belief is established in our hearts, and God knows, when that would be. And even if you feel it is established in your heart, then God knows about it. And so you don't have to make statements about how good of a submitter you are, right? Because believers are people who have attained certainty and are people who are certain about God's revelations. God says believers, and God says believers are those who strive with their money and their lives in the cause of God, right? So people who are like sedentary or people who are like referred to as weak believers, they're not quote unquote believers, but they're the sedentary. And God says the strivers have higher ranks than the sedentary. And so the believers, the mu'mins, are those who are actually strivers, who strive in the cause of God with their money and their lives, right? And we know where the Arabs stand right now, and as far as God is concerned. They're enemies of God who are opposing the truth and setting the worst examples around the world to defame God in any way possible, and going against God's religion left and right. And so obviously they're not believers. Verse 17, who is doing whom a favor? They act as if they're doing you a favor by embracing submission. Say, you're not doing me any favor by embracing submission. God is the one who's doing you a great favor by guiding you to the faith if you are sincere. God knows all the secrets in the heavens and the earth. God is seer of everything you do. So this is one thing that you will find among hypocrites, is that as they are in this path, they act as if they're doing the messenger a favor, right? And so this is ironically something that I saw in the history with some of the messengers, but also the messenger of the covenant, right? And what's documented in the videos, some of the videos, where these hypocrites, as they are pointed out, and clearly, they try to tell the messenger, first of all, how good of a believer they are, and then also how much they have been with him, and I've been this and I've done that, So they're clearly, acting this whole time as if they're doing him a favor, like he's obligated under some condition to support him. I mean, to support them, to be on their side, And I think I've seen similar circumstances with people in the past where, like, they were, in my perspective, they were clearly against the path, but they were people that were sort of close, and then when these religious situations occur where there is clearly difference, and they're opposing, and you oppose them, then it's like, how can you oppose me? Like, I did this and this and this, like they're all doing all these favors. So if you're doing everything that you're doing it for God, not for people, right? So things like that don't even have to ever be brought up that you did this and you did that, So, because God knows, it's all with God, and we should, and as we're striving in the path of God too, as we're doing things, we should be mindful of this, that whatever we're doing, we're not doing it for each other, we're doing it, or for the messenger in this case, right? Everything we're doing is for God. And God is the one who's doing us a favor. When we are doing something in the cause of God, we should not be like proud and thing, but then at the same time also feel like, I did this great favor in the religion, and feel so proud about it. No, you did yourself a favor. You are helping yourself. But I'm saying, but actually, it's like God, you're not even doing anything. God is the one who is guiding you. He's helping you. He's doing you a favor. So if anything, you should just be very thankful that God allowed you to do something, rather than pat yourself on the back, I did this for the sake of God. Because God doesn't need us. We're the ones who need God. And so God says that He knows all the secrets in the heavens and the earth. God is sure of everything you do. So whatever you're doing, and you don't even need to pretend or show you did something, because God already knows, right? So we should just, whenever we do something, we should just do it and forget about it. But thank God for it, that God allowed us to do this and guide us in this path. And that's it. But showing off and just, it should scare us. Whether we're saying it to each other, or we're saying it in front of others, or saying it to ourselves, even it should not even ever happen. Surah 50, Q, Qaf. In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. Q and the glorious Quran. And the footnote says, see Appendix 1 for the awesome miracles connected with initial Q. And so, if we look at initial Q in Appendix 1, we will see that there is a great mathematical miracle that God has brought for us, and this is on page 379. It says the computer data showed that the text of the only Q initial surahs 42 and 50 contained the same number of Qs, 57 and 57. That was the first hint that a deliberate mathematical system might exist in the Quran. Surah 15 is entitled Q, prefixed with Q, and the first verse reads, Q and the glorious Quran. This indicated Q stands for Quran, and the total number of Qs in the two Q initial surahs represents the Quran's 114 surahs. 57 plus 57 equals 114, or 19 times 6. This idea was strengthened by the fact that the Quran occurs in the Quran 57 times, referring to this Quran. The Quran is described in Surah Q as Majid, glorious, and the Arabic for word Majid has a geometrical value of 57. Surah 42 consists of 53 verses. 42 plus 53 is 95, or 19 times 5. And then Surah 50 consists of 45 verses, and 50 plus 45 is equal to 95, same as the total in Surah 42. By counting the letter Q in every verse 19 throughout the Quran, the total count comes to be 76 or 19 times 4. So, subhanAllah, I mean, there's so many things related to the letter Q. So Q, this was the first part that came out of the Quran's, computer data that was put into the computer by Dr. Rishad Khalifa in 1974. So, okay, so you guys can hear me, right?
Yes, mashallah.
Okay, mashallah. So please,
Yes.
anybody, please don't send me messages while I'm reading because it distracts. Okay, unless it's really important. All right. So, God willing, I'd like to continue with the summary. It says the frequent. So number one is that the frequency of the Q in Surah Q is 57, or 90 times 3. The letter Q occurs in the other Q initial surahs 42, exactly the same number of times, 57. Number 3, the total occurrence of the letter Q in the two Q initial surahs is 114, which is the total number of surahs in the Quran. Number 4, the Quran is mentioned in the Quran 57 times. Number 5, the description of the Quran as Majid is correlated with the frequency of occurrence of the letter Q in each of the Q initial surahs. The word Majid has a geometrical value of 57. Surah 42 consists of 53 verses, and Surah 50 consists of 45 verses. Both are Q initial, and both the surah number and the number of verses for both of them adds up to be 95. Number 9, the number of Q in all verses, number 19 throughout the Quran is 76. So, subhanAllah, I mean, these are so many mathematical proofs, so all of these obviously could not possibly be like a coincidence, so God has blessed us really by, giving us these mathematical facts as part of, the great mathematical miracle. And, obviously, this is just barely, scratching the surface. There's so many mathematical proofs related to the Quran's mathematical code that and God calls us, one of the great miracles, or the ultimate miracle, and so we understand why. Recently I was contacted by some guy, and he was trying to tell me, oh no, this is, well, he was like a Quranist, and so I didn't know prior to contacting him. I thought it was someone who was maybe wants to be a submitter, and he was interested in learning about the mathematical code. And as I started talking to him, like, I understood that, he was just like a Quranist, between Quranist and Sunni, halfway. And I was like, no, there's other miracles as well. I'm like, okay, so tell me, what other miracles are there, And so he's like, oh, there's others, like, it's like the day is mentioned 365 times. I was like, so do you think that's better than the mathematical miracle of 19? I mean, these are all mathematical dimensions of the Quran, right? But there's no miracle we can say now is greater than the Quran's mathematical miracle that we have ever seen, right? And this is God's awesome proof for us, that gives us the assurance that everything that we're reading, everything that we have learned from the messenger, everything that has been explained to us, we're following the truth, which obviously, as we know, comes with great responsibility. But it's such a blessing, from God, that we can be thankful of. I mean, every religion in the world, wants people to know that they have the right understanding, they have the truth, right? But it's everybody's dream that they have something that is proof enough that yes, what they really have is the truth, but they don't, But God has given it to us, so we know truly for a fact that submission is the only religion acceptable to God, and we have the ultimate mathematical proof that is undeniable that proves to us that everything that we have is a truth. So it's a great, subhanAllah, we cannot even express it in words, how much of a blessing that is from God, But now the responsibility is on us, that we have all this information. How are we doing with it? Are we going to be able to do justice to ourselves? It's a huge responsibility. And so it doesn't put us in a much better position. It does in some ways. Obviously, you get a head start in a lot of things, right? But at the same time, it's a huge responsibility. And if you do bad after that, it's that much worse, right? Being a hypocrite then obviously means you're going to the lowest pit of hell, right? And so, and these people who have the truth, who are so close to the truth, these become the most dangerous people, So, because these are the people that are sitting at the very top to try to throw people down, as they're themselves going to go down also, and they are going down. But it's like, if you think of it as a journey, right? Let's say you're climbing on the tallest mountain in the world. Let's say you're climbing on the peak of Mount Everest, right? So these people are like, and as people are going through their journey of trying to climb to that top of that mountain, these people are standing at the very top trying to throw you off, because there's so many idols, obvious idols, Muhammad, Ali, all these things, and there's all these groups that are trying to push people away, right? Crooked path and all that. But these people are at the very top, trying to mislead people. So obviously, they're playing with the nitty gritty and playing with the details, coming from the most righteous angles, So it's extremely difficult, right? And so, but these are the most dangerous people. These are the people that are causing the innovations, adding innovations, changing the religion from inside, sneakily. So it's a big responsibility for us, and means that we have to work even harder, than any other group, any other people, right? We have all this knowledge, we have all the gifts, but it's like, you find a treasure, right? What are you going to do with it? You can really just take it and throw it in garbage, or you can take it and use it, right? And really that's the key here, that we have to use this information to grow our souls, to better us, so we can advance ourselves as submitters. So verse 2 says, they found it strange that a warner from among them came to them. The disbelievers said, this is really strange. After we die and become dust, this is impossible. We are fully aware of any one of them who gets consumed by the earth. We have an accurate record. They rejected the truth when it came to them. They are utterly confused. Have they not looked at the sky above them and how we constructed it and adorned it without a flaw? And we created the earth and scattered on it mountains and grew in it all kinds of beautiful plants. This is an enlightenment and a reminder for every pious worshipper. And we sent from the sky blessed water to grow with it, gardens and grains to be harvested, tall date palms with clustered fruit, provisions for the people, and we revive with it dead lands. You are similarly resurrected. So subhanAllah, God says that they found it really strange that a warner came to them from among them, another human being, and the fact that they just find the most odd is that after they die and become dust, as it says, become dust, this is impossible, But God is saying that He's fully aware of everything and everyone who gets consumed. Obviously, He knows about every single thing, anywhere, at any time. So God says that these people are confused. Have they not seen everything that God is capable of doing? The sky above them, the beautiful heavenly bodies that He has constructed flawlessly. Everything that you see around you is flawless, right? When you look at the sky at night, it is flawless. You look at the system that God has created, it is flawless. You look at the beautiful plants God has created. It's amazing the system God has put in place that's running itself for millions of years without a flaw. You know, how the sun comes at the right time every single day. You know, all of these are flawless things that God has created. And so God says, do you see how God brings down the water and the land is completely dead? And you see the plants, you know, sprouting out of the seeds out of nothing, and you see life coming out of it. You see all the microorganisms and, you know, all the butterflies and all the moths and insects, ants, all these things just springing out of nowhere. Why is it so hard for God to create you? I mean, look at us. He created us the first time, right? I mean, imagine just the first creation, right? You were nothing, right? I mean, imagine yourself being in your mother's belly as a single drop of nothing, and then being the human beings that you are, talking, right? So who made it possible? I mean, how? Nobody can do that, right? There's no other way to explain it than the fact that God is the one who did it. And if He's doing it in front of your eyes every single day, what would stop God from doing that in the hereafter? Nothing. And so, but people find it hard to understand that. I mean, when God talks about the different beautiful plants that He has created, I mean, think about how many species of different plants there are, and how many species of plants are within those species, right? So it's mind-boggling. I mean, you start thinking about all of this stuff. I mean, you understand that obviously God who created them is omnipotent. You know, if you think about all the different systems He has created in all of these organisms, I mean, there's so many different varieties. There's so many ways in which an animal can consume food, for example, and they have such huge varieties in the way they consume it, and what they consume, and where they survive. And God has made it so that anything can survive in some kind of environment, right? I mean, even when you go down to the point of, say, volcanoes where there's lava, there's insects living right by the lava, right? If you go down to the middle of the ocean, there's insects living there. If you go into the Arctic and in the North Pole, you know, you will see there is some kind of life living within that snow. So, and God made things, to be able to live in all of those habitats. And He has created different systems for them to be able to live in those. So these things, all of these things He's mentioning to us here in the Quran to help us understand His power, that He can do anything. And it should it should really strengthen our faith in the hereafter and resurrection. God says, because God says, and we revive with the dead land, you are similarly resurrected, right? And so resurrection is the same in the hereafter exactly. I mean, we'll come out of the earth just like plants, or just like other insects. Verse 12 says, disbelieving before them were the people of Noah, the dwellers of Rus and Thamud, and Ad, Pharaoh, and the brethren of Lot, and the dwellers of the woods, and the people of Tubba. All of them disbelieved the messengers, and consequently my retribution befell them. Were we too burdened by the first creation? Is this why they doubt resurrection? We created the human, and we know what he whispers to himself. We are closer to him than his jugular vein. Two recording angels at right and left are constantly recording. Not an utterance does he utter without an alert witness. Finally, the inevitable coma of death comes. This is what you try to evade. So, obviously, we have all the examples of all the generations of people that came before us that disbelieved, and God says, note the consequences. The people of Noah, I mean, they were annihilated. The dwellers of Rus and Thamud, Ad, Pharaoh, people of Lot, they were all annihilated when they disbelieved the message. And God says, my retribution befell them. They disbelieved the messengers, right? It says they disbelieved the messengers. So these people are who are disbelieving now can expect the same consequences, obviously. Much worse, actually, because we have even bigger miracles, right? And so it's at a bigger scale also. So we know what's coming for these people. It's a big retribution. It's a lot worse. But even before that, there is the selective annihilation that occurs, individual people one by one, So God says that we created the human. We are closer to him than his jugular vein. Your jugular vein is nothing's closer to you than your own jugular vein, but God says he's even closer than that. He knows everything about you, every single thing. Like, you can't hide anything from God. Like, there's no layer of you that's hidden from God, right? No part of you, no part of your thoughts even that's hidden from God. God knows your thoughts more than you know your own thoughts. I mean, that's how well God knows you and how well God knows where you stand, right? So, and then there's the 2 recording angels God has put with every human being that are recording everything they're doing. So God says, not an utterance does he utter without an alert witness. So we have to be extremely careful, extremely careful. We are being watched, literally. Okay. Verse 19 says, finally the inevitable coma of death comes. This is what you tried to evade. The horn is blown. This is the promised day. Every soul comes with a herder and a witness. You used to be oblivious to this. We now remove your veil. Today your vision is as strong as steel. The companion said, here is my formidable testimony. So the footnote says for 50:23 to 28, your lifetime companion witnesses everything you do. See Appendix 7. So it says the companion, he said, here's my formidable testimony. Throw into Gehenna every stubborn disbeliever, forbidder of charity, aggressor, full of doubt. He set up beside God another God. Throw him into severe retribution. His companion said, our Lord, I did not mislead him. He was far astray. He said, do not feud in front of me. I have sufficiently warned you. Nothing can be changed now. I am never unjust towards the people. That is the day when we ask hell, have you had enough? It will say, give me more. Paradise will be offered to the righteous readily. This is what was promised to every repenter steadfast. They reverenced the Most Gracious in their privacy and came wholeheartedly. Enter it in peace. This is the day of eternity. They get anything they wish therein, and we have even more. So then God talks about the events of the hereafter, right? I mean, this is up until they die, right? Then this is what God says that they try to evade. I mean, people are trying to reverse the aging process, right? And then nobody wants to think about death because they don't want to die. That's why they don't want to talk about it. And they think by not talking about it and just by keeping a blind eye to that it will not happen, right? It's like an ostrich when she buries or he buries the head into the sand to avoid danger, right? And that's what people are doing, People don't want to think about death and dying, and they just look at this life and they just keep themselves keep themselves in the dark and live a life of oblivion where they don't have to think about anything. But obviously that's not the solution. And so on the day of judgment, God says every soul comes with a herder and a witness. So obviously the herder will be responsible for bringing us, and then you have the witness, which is your companion also. If this is the companion, right? And God says the companion witnesses everything we do, and so he's going to testify against you on the day of judgment. And depending on, obviously, what you did, right? But your companion is your friend. He's a companion, right? But I mean, for a disbeliever, he's going to be his friend in all the evil stuff, right? But on the day of judgment, they're going to turn against each other. And the companion is going to say that I didn't mislead him. He was evil himself. And he's right about that, because even though he did mislead him, the guy was evil too, to deserve a devil like him to be his companion, right? And so they both, obviously he could have not, he had the choice not to listen to the devil too. But it was in him that he was going to listen, and he was going to be like him. And so God allowed them to be together so they can both help each other in going to hell. And God says, so who these people are? These are stubborn tyrants, stubborn disbelievers, What is stubborn, right? I mean, you tell them the truth, you explain to them over and over, right? But they're stubborn, they don't want to believe. They don't want to be guided. They insist on going to hell, right? And so these were the people, and they were forbidden of charity, they were aggressors, and they were full of doubt. Obviously, if you have doubt, you're not in a good place. But these people, and we have to work on those doubts, try to overcome them. And we worship in order to attain certainty, right? But these are the people that let their doubts overtake them, and become disbelievers. And so in doing all of that, they set up another god besides God. And who is that god? It's the devil. And God says on the day of judgment, when they say, no, I didn't mislead him, he was himself evil, the devil is also wrong, because he did mislead him as well. They misled each other almost. But obviously the companion was much more evil than the human counterpart, and so he did mislead him clearly. But God says to both of them, nothing can be changed. Both of them will burn in hell, right? And God says, I have sufficiently warned you. Of course, the proofs came, but people insisted on disbelieving, and now they will be suffering the consequences for that. And God says, that is the day when we ask hell, have you had enough? So hell is very much of a living entity that, serves God, right? And so God will ask to hell if it had enough, and the hell will say, no, I want more. Give me more. Like, there's more people, I can take them. So there's a lot of room for disbelievers. It's not like it's not like some people will go to heaven because there's not enough room in hell. There's a lot of room in hell. So every disbeliever, there's plenty of room. Anybody who deserves to go to hell will have a guaranteed spot. In other words. But God says, paradise will be offered to the righteous readily. We don't even have to wait. Like, in this world, imagine like something that is of little bit of value, considerably, and people find out it's of a little bit of a value. People rush to it, and there's a shortage and there's a waiting list. My gosh. But on the day of judgment, and let's say you want to go to a really nice resort, like in the peak season, right? I mean, there's going to be a huge waiting list unless you book in advance, right? But in the hereafter, in heaven, God says it is reserved for the righteous. It will be readily available to them. So obviously there's nothing more exquisite and exclusive than paradise. Nothing more luxurious and entertaining and beautiful, right? And God says it will be offered readily to the believers because they deserve it, God says this is what is promised to every repenter, steadfast. So obviously people who repent from their sins and remember God through everything, and they're steadfast through all the tests that they faced on earth, and they passed them. And they reverence God even when alone in their privacy, when they were tempted through various things, and they came to God with their full heart, wholeheartedly. God says, enter in peace. This is the day of eternity. You get anything you wish and more. So you get anything you can wish for, possibly, but there's even more. There's more for you in paradise than you can wish for. So imagine that. And God says in verse 36, many a generation before them who were more powerful we annihilated. They searched the land. Did they find an escape? This should be a lesson for everyone who possesses a mind or is able to hear and witness. We have created the heavens and the earth and everything between them in 6 days, and no fatigue touched us. So obviously the 6 days is a yardstick, and doesn't literally mean it was 6 days, but also during this time that God created, God says no fatigue touched us. He created the heavens and the earth. I mean, think about the vastness of the universes, the 7 universes. I mean, it's unfathomable. But God says, even after doing all of that, no fatigue touched him. Like you just clean your room and then you're tired, right? And God created everything in the 7 universes, and it's like nothing for him, right? Subhanallah. So that's God. That's the power of God. And so for God, nothing is impossible, right? We should always remember that. So God says, therefore, be patient in the face of their utterances, and praise and glorify our Lord before sunrise and before sunset. During the night you shall meditate on his name, and after prostrating. Prepare for the day when the caller calls from a place that is near. When they hear the inevitable cry, that is the day you come out. We are the ones who control life and death. To us is the final destiny. The day will come when the earth cracks in a hurry, giving rise to them. Such summoning is easy for us to do. We are fully aware of everything they utter, while you have no power over them. Therefore, remind with this Quran those who reverence my warnings. So praise be to God. I mean, God is saying, talking about what is awaiting the believers, the beautiful paradise and endless joy and happiness. And so these little, minor situations that you go through, I'm trying to think of a word, like minor nuisance that you have to go through in this world, comparatively speaking, right? So really it's nothing, God says, right? So just be patient. And while you are being patient, remember to commemorate God, day and night. Remember him, meditate on his name, and after prostrating, during the night, before sunrise and before sunset. So these are important times for us to remember God, right? And we should remember during those times that we have to remember God, and if we're doing other things, that we should be mindful that this is a time for us to remember God. And during the night you shall meditate on his name, and after prostrating. God says, prepare for the day when the caller calls from a place that is near. So, I mean, a lot of these are allegorical, but that is a day when the horn is going to be blown, right? And everybody will hear it and come out. And when they hear the inevitable cry, I believe it's referring to the horn being blown. It is like it will be like an inevitable cry. It's inevitable because nothing can stop it from happening, as God says, right? And that is the day that God says that we will all come out And God says, we are the ones who control life and death. To us is the final destiny. The day will come when the earth cracks in a hurry and all these people will come out, right? And you look at it and God describes like they will come out like moths and butterflies, right? The disbelievers like, an army of moths, right? But the believers, will come out like butterflies. They'll all be airborne on that day. And God says such summoning is easy for us to do. We're fully aware of everything they utter while you have no power over them. Therefore, remind with this Quran those who reverence my warnings. And so God says, remind with this Quran those who reverence my warnings. Obviously, people who don't care about God, reminders do not help them, right? Only people who will heed the reminders are those who reverence God. So we shouldn't even waste our time with people who don't care. The reminder is for the righteous. The reminder is for those who are seeking the truth. And with all of this, may God allow us to practice what we just read. If we can just do these things, really, our hereafter will be so much better than so many other people, right? So may God allow us to be one of those people who will be victorious and who deserve to be with God. With this, I will end. If you guys have any comments or questions, please feel free. Thank you.
MashaAllah, brother.
Thank you.
MashaAllah, brother.
All right, so if there are any comments or questions, anyone, please feel free. We read from Surah 49:15. Okay, so I guess while we're waiting for other comments, we read about your lifetime companion witnesses everything you do. See Appendix 7, right? And so Appendix 7. Appendix 7 talks about why we were created. And we were having that discussion last time about the jinn companions. And so this is very interesting, and it gives detail about some of those questions that we were discussing in our previous Quran study about our jinn companions. And it's interesting, like recently I was having this conversation with another submitter also about the jinns and like if the jinns are males or females, and what happens to your loved ones after they pass away, like if they try to contact you or something, or if they still have their genders. And it was an interesting discussion. But these these details are very important for us to understand about the jinns and humans and the relationship they have in this world. So it talks about how for the jinns that every time a human person reproduces, so jinn also reproduces at the same time, and then you end up with a child who has the human soul and a jinn descendant with him, so that he can continue to push his point of view. It says every time a human being is born, a human person is assigned to the new baby from the depository of souls. God assigns the souls in accordance with his knowledge. Every soul deserves to be assigned to a certain body and live under certain circumstances. God knows which souls are good and which souls are evil. Our children are assigned to our homes in accordance with God's plan. So, an independent jinn soul is also assigned to the new human being to represent Satan's point of view. While the physical body of any jinn is reproduced from the parent jinns, the jinn's soul is that of an independent individual. Jinns are descendants of Satan, 727-1850. The assigned jinn remains with the human being from birth to death and serves as a main witness on the day of judgment, 50:23, which is what verse we just read today. A continuous debate takes place in our heads between the human soul and the jinn soul until both of them are convinced of one point of view. Right? So they are debating with you, right? And so just as you know what they're saying, they know what you're saying, and they're saying that it's like a back and forth dialogue that is happening between the two, right? Until you are able to convince them or they're able to convince you. That is interesting.
MashaAllah, thank you for sharing this too.
Yeah, mashallah, you're welcome.
Because I'm the guy just working on it. I feel it, like it's really, it's reality, like it's going on. I feel it, and God willing, I'll be the one who can pass this exam, because I have to convince him, or I have to convince that being, and what we show. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, mashallah.
So, Brother Suleiman, just out of curiosity, okay, so when the soul is assigned to the body in this world, before that we are just like unclassified beings. Like we were just like classified as humans because we were like 50-50 on our thoughts about whether Satan could be a god beside God. And we were then, like, by the wisdom of God, assigned to this body and in that family at that time, right? And whether we are male or female, again, it's the wisdom of God, okay? So do the jinns also have, like, male and female? I mean, now that you brought up the topic.
Well, God says they reproduce, right?
Okay.
And then also the other thing we talked about was they also have spouses in paradise.
Also, okay,
just
so
like
that,
us.
That settles it then, okay? So
yeah.
That shows that they have gender the same as us as well, right?
Yeah.
And that makes sense because, like, for example, a companion of a girl should be a girl, right? And a companion of
Right.
a boy should be a boy. MashaAllah.
You've had a whole other debate in there.
What is it?
No, I said people will have fun with that too. Okay. Yeah, subhanAllah. I mean, God says that in paradise, right? They have one for themselves, one for the jinns, one for the humans. And, they get spouses also. But the thing is, even when we have spouses, like, technically, I mean, the reproduction as we know it only is happening here, right, on this earth. But they're just companions of each other. And, but, gender doesn't necessarily have to be the exact same thing as we know it here, but it is something, right? It's not something that we have to be super concerned about, but it's a good information, I suppose, to understand that they are created in pairs. God says He has created everything in pairs, and so it makes sense to have pairs in this as well, right? But I know, like, I don't know, angels don't have any such thing, but humans and jinns do, because they come here. But like planets and all those things, they don't have gender, right? So having a gender is not really necessary. But in paradise, there are spouses. So if you think about it, like, the moon is going to have a spouse probably in lower heaven, right? Or not? That's interesting. Yeah, but I think the main thing for us to learn from this is that the jinn companion, I mean, what we have to be concerned about is the hereafter of our salvation, right? And what we have to do as we live with our companion, like, he's constantly with us, like, like, for example, when people talk about, like, your biggest enemy being yourself, where, we, keep pushing ourselves in the wrong path, like, and doing bad things that hurt us, we hurt our own selves, so a lot of it is contributed to our jinn also helping, pushing those ideas. And so that's why it's impossible for you to survive this life successfully and in the right direction without God in your life, right? Because your life is it's like a car that has no driver, right? And your jinn just takes over. He's stronger, and he's evil, and you just let it drive, because he's constantly pushing Satan's point of view. So it's very important for us to have guidance from God at that point and strength from God to be able to resist the temptation and the things. Obviously, like, we have all the religious duties that God has given us in this world to help us in this direction, to help us make the soul stronger, so that the soul can be the boss, also of the body, because the body wants all these worldly things also, naturally. So we have to make our soul stronger, much stronger than anything, so that it overpowers the entire system, right? And just really steadfast with our companions. We have to be aware of our thoughts, and obviously we have to we have to question all our decisions, actions, what we do, our thoughts. Like, if you're about to do something, like, why you're doing it, So And if there's things that you feel as a waste of time, then we try not to do them, or thinking about things that are just a complete waste of time. I mean, bothering, filling up your brain with the worries of this world. I mean, it's very easy to fall into any of those things, right? I mean, as we go on in our day, we can easily make other things our gods and just spend the entire day thinking about those issues. SubhanAllah, when we should be only concerned about, really our real concern is only our hereafter, which is looming on our heads, all of us, so that we can benefit ourselves, God willing.
SubhanAllah, when we spend our time during the day as much as we can and as much as is possible, given the circumstances of life, then we see that, I mean, the things that we worry about or are on our mind, like for example, the things that we are supposed to be doing, anything, like any worldly matter, SubhanAllah, they get taken care of, in the best and the fastest way possible. If it was like for any other person, it would have taken, for example, say 2 or 3 months. Then you see that it's taken care of for you like in a week or in a day, and you don't do anything. You just have to wait and steadfastly persevere, and you see that just in a blink of an eye, it's solved for you. I mean, and it has happened over and over again that you say, okay, now this is the formula. I have to strive more in this path, and then all the rest will be taken care of. And that's actually true. And anybody who is listening to us, they should also try it. Do everything that God is telling you to do, and don't do the things that God tells you not to do. And then you have the formula. That's it. As easy as possible. And you can have anything. You don't have to worry about anything. SubhanAllah.
Okay, mashallah. I mean, people who haven't spoken, there's Shima, Nadia, Jafar, Umid. You guys want to have any questions? Also, comments?
MashaAllah, actually, I have a question. If I think it's an off-topic question. If I can ask.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so we know that heaven is divided to two sections, like a high heaven and low heaven. I was reading the Quran yesterday, and I came across the verse. It's in Surah 14, verse. No, let me check if I'm not mistaken. Oh, sorry. It's Surah 15, verse 44, which it says that it will have 7 gates. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. I will start from verse 43. It said, and hell awaits them all. It will have 7 gates. Each gate will get a specific share of them. So, according to this verse, can we assume that the hell would have 7 sections or something like this?
Well, I mean, we can't necessarily, because it just says it has seven gates. Like, doesn't necessarily mean it has seven sections. It could be, but you can have a house with seven gates, and it will be the same house. One could be the back gate, one could be the side gate. Like you have a stadium, for example, right? It can have 10 gates, right? But they could all just lead to one stadium, or it can lead to seven sections in a stadium. But obviously, we know that in hell also there are ranks, different ranks. There's the lowest pit of hell God talks about. Then God talks about the heart of hell, right? So there are obviously different parts, but the verse itself to me doesn't necessarily say that there are seven sections. In the sense, it just says there's seven gates, right?
Yes, mashallah. Maybe I I didn't choose the word correctly. So I mean it that because it said that each gate will get a specific share of them. I was thinking that maybe it's like a filter for them that they're going to enter, and then each gate will get like some of them. I don't know, but
Right.
anyway, I understand what you're explaining. Thank you so much, brother.
Right.
Mashallah.
Yeah. I mean, you can even think of it like buildings, right? They could have different buildings, and so to go to each building, you have to go to a certain gate, right? So let's say it's like a prison, right? And the prison can have multiple buildings, and to get to a certain building, you have to use a certain gate, right? So maybe there could be five sections, who knows, right? But you have two gates that lead to one section, and then three gates may lead to another section. So I'm just saying it's possible, but it's not conclusively like saying that it will have seven parts of it too, you know. But we know for a fact that God says there's two heavens: there's a higher heaven and then there's a lower heaven, right? But we don't know there about that for like for hell itself. I mean, we just know it as one entity, but obviously there's ranks within it, you know. But it's interesting when I read this because I recently, had a dream about hell, and I saw like it had a gate, like it had a big gate, and so when I read this verse, it just reminded me of my dream.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
interesting, brother.
yeah.
And then, so at the same time, it makes sense that in the actually the appendices we have like four sections. So we have like high heaven, low heaven, the purgatory, and then we have hell. We don't have like any description for high like hell, low hell. We don't have that. But it's like one place, and then obviously um, I think that makes sense that, for example, the retribution for example, dictators who have killed, like, for example, millions of people or thousands of people with no reason other than having their ego and thinking that, for example, they are the only right people, and worse than that, attributing their ideas to God. Like, for example, we have the like so-called Islamic, like right now, corrupted leaders that they're just killing people, and they're saying that we are the representative of God, and anybody who says anything against us is actually fighting God. Nauzubillah. So basically, I think their retribution should be higher than the person who has not like done enough to get out of hell. Does it make sense?
Yeah, I mean, of course, God says He's totally just, right? So whatever anybody did, they'll pay for it, right? So,
Yeah, mashallah.
yeah.
And that specific share of them is like those gates, and specific share of them is like specifically defined to those who have committed like so and so like injustice or like sins, and then they will be like taken, maybe something like that. But still,
Yeah,
it's the
but
same place.
it can also be just related to their address, you know, in hell.
Huh?
It can also just be related to their address in hell, you know.
Their zip code.
Yeah, yeah,
And if I remember correctly, so there is like high heaven and low heaven for jinns as well, right?
yeah.
So we have this, basically we have like four sections in the high heaven. So two sections for like one section in the high heaven for humans and one section for jinns, and then low heaven one section for humans and one section for jinns, right?
Well, they're not sections. They're more like heavens, right? So there's
Oh,
one
okay.
paradise.
Yeah.
There's
Okay.
yeah. There's two heavens, one for jinns, one for humans, and then there's two for
Interesting.
yeah,
SubhanAllah, I mean, it's really, I mean, it's beyond our
yeah.
comprehension, you know. Whatever we have is like we're looking at everything like a three-dimensional beings,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't have access to the fourth dimension. Actually, it has children's lock for us, time, so we
Mm-hmm.
can only move forward in time, and we can't do anything about time.
Yeah.
And like higher dimensions, it's just like SubhanAllah, I mean, we can't understand
Mm-hmm.
it. And it was the other day that I was watching a video on TED Talk, and it was about like a person was talking about the dark matter, and said that like she was an astrophysicist, and then said that actually 5% of what we see is actually matter. The rest of it is dark, like dark matter and dark energy. So it's like just there are things that have mass that the mathematics behind them makes complete sense, but then it's invisible. They can't like measure it. They can't touch it. It's not among the particles that they have discovered so far, the subatomic particles. So we can only say Subhanallah.
I had an off-topic question.
Um,
Can you hear me?
yeah, sure.
Yeah. So in one of the studies, after the studies probably, we were talking about that God created, the stars and all the worlds around them, because of the fact that the majority of the souls that there was not enough space in the world, that God also created them, the stars and all the other things that are not in this world. They also have a soul, right? I don't know if that's correct or not. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, was that the reason? Because I remember something like that that Rashad said.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he didn't. I wasn't sure, and I didn't really have time to check. But do you remember something like that?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So that he said that God created all the stars and
Mm-hmm.
all the
Yeah.
heavenly things around them,
Mm-hmm.
because or else they wouldn't fit in the world, in this world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Also, like, I was watching this video, short video, online somewhere, and this person was trying to compare the population of stars in our universe to the grains of sands on this earth, right? And so she was saying for every grain of sand found on earth, there are 10,000 stars. But I don't know if it's like a real comparison. It's like an estimate that she had based on whatever the scientists have estimated, right? But there's lots and lots of heavenly bodies, but there's also lots and lots of souls here. There's so many insects and so many microorganisms, and so much. I mean, there's microorganisms. I mean, if you think about it, right, they also have souls,
So
and
do
so
you
there's so
remember
much.
exactly where the messenger said that?
I don't have
Because
that great of a memory,
yeah,
but I know
yeah, like
I know he said
yeah, I
it.
don't
So
really, yeah,
yeah.
because I remembered something like when we said, okay, let's, if we say something about what the messenger said, we
Well,
should be
it's
able
not. Yeah,
to.
yeah, but I mean, are you saying is it necessarily about space that there wasn't enough space
Like the thing what I remember was like that he said that you have this vast amount of souls, right? And then God created everything in the heavens and in the earth as well.
Yeah.
And because of the amount of the souls, that is like
So
that's
many.
a lot. Yeah, so many that he also created like the stars and all the planets and all those things. Because the messenger said it wouldn't fit in this tiny world, all the souls.
Well, definitely the world is very
Some-
tiny, right? For Satan it had to be of a certain size to be fair to Satan. Like Satan cannot even control this planet, right? So if God made it even bigger, I mean, obviously God can make anything, right? God could even make it bigger, but the thing is, like, Satan's dominion is limited to what he's supposed to control to this world, right? But if these beings were there too, then he'd have to navigate around that as well. It would be more. I mean, it would become a much bigger challenge. I'm just thinking out loud, but yeah, I mean, the souls. Obviously, God's army is huge, right? I mean, the angels itself, first of all, is uncountable, right? And then creatures who took the opportunity to repent is also huge, right? We were just like the unlucky rebellion, that didn't take that chance. So definitely, obviously, there's so many souls, much more than the population of people that are coming to this world, right? I'm guessing. Like if you count the stars and all these animals and everything.
Humans, of course.
Yeah.
And all the
Jinns.
and all the souls that will live on after the age of 40. It's like so less compared to all the things.
And I was just thinking like about the jinns, right? And so it's interesting that our jinns will most likely live up until the end of the world.
They will witness what's going to happen.
Yeah, because they're living a few hundred years.
Okay, so do I still need to, let's say, find the place where the messenger said this thing what I remembered? Brother Masood, I don't know. I need to check. Yeah.
I'm trying to actually.
Like now I've got Suleman, he's also saying the same.
I'm trying to find what you're saying in the sermons, and I'm trying to search it, but I don't find anything like that. Probably it was in the Quran studies, right?
It was after. It wasn't. It was after the live session. We were talking afterwards. We were talking about. You remember?
Oh, I see.
You were saying about the stars, about how it worked, and like
no.
physicist.
No, what I'm saying is that what you remember from what Dr. Rashad Khalifa said. Do you think that it was in the sermons, or do you think it was in the Quran studies, the audio Quran studies?
Oh, that's the thing that I don't remember. Maybe
but you're saying Masood is the one who brought it up, right?
No.
Okay.
I said something and then.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
No. Masood warned me. He said we shouldn't say things, because they didn't hear that.
Okay.
And what I said was like the messenger said something.
So the burden is on you then.
Yeah.
Go look it up.
Yeah.
Mashallah, I mean, the good thing about the transcripts of the files, the sermons, is that like if you remember something, we can search it, like a keyword or something, and then we would be able to find it. But unfortunately, at the moment, we don't have like the transcripts of the Quran sessions. And inshallah, when we have them, then it would be way, way easier to search everything, and then we can start reading from what exactly Dr. Rashad Khalid said, and without even assuming anything. Yeah.
Yeah, even like right now you can search the audios, but it's more like by topic, like you have highlights.
Yeah, it's not
Yeah,
exact like
yeah.
the words and everything.
Yeah, but
Yes,
like you can
correct.
search for when he's talking about heavenly bodies, for example, or stars, and you may
Mhm.
find stuff. You know how to do that?
Yeah, on the website. Yeah.
On the website, yeah, you can do it on the website too. One can do it on the app as well. When you listen to in the Quran studies, there's
Explain, please.
search.
Oh,
There's search
Then
available.
everyone will know.
Okay, so let me share my screen then. Mm, okay. So hold on. So I'm sharing my screen,
hmm
and but here, okay.
Sorry, brother, that's your mobile screen or
No, that's my
you open
computer
it on your
screen.
laptop?
That's my
Okay.
computer screen. Yeah.
So do we have an access on the computer as well to the application?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
So you go
thank you.
to submission.guide, you know, and then you see the app basically. So if you go to media now, this is a little more much recent version, so the interface looks a little bit different. This is not live yet. Well, it is live. Sorry, some of it, anyways. So when you go to the studies, right, and you start playing one of them, currently that's how the interface is. And you start playing one of them, right? There is the option for notes, right? So not to add notes. This one is on the right side is for adding notes, and this one is for on the left. This icon is for viewing notes. So you click on it, and there's a search comes up, right? So this is searching the. This is looking at the highlights in the recent audio. So at 18 minutes is talking about size of the soul. 23 minutes is talking about one angel in charge of hell, stuff like that, right? But if I say all audios, then it starts to show me all the audios and the notes that were part of that audio, right? And so I can search here, for example, if I want to search on marriage, right? So then I see all the results for marriage in all of the audios, right? And for example, if I want to search for marriage, let's say I want to search for marriage and Quran, right? So if I want to say marriage against Quran, right? So this one comes up. But let's say I want to search for all of the ones where he's talking about marriage and Quran, and I say any words or all the words. So let's talk about marriage and Quran, right? So you see, right? So sorry, unpaused. Yep. So that's how it works. Right.
MashaAllah, thank you, brother.
Yeah.
Brother Jafar, I actually, MashaAllah, found your answer in the introduction section of the book. So it has, it might be repeated in the audio file, but
Sorry.
Yeah, can you please read it?
yes, Brother Suleman, can I share the screen?
Yeah, I can share it here. That's fine. Introduction
Okay,
section,
so that's
right?
perfect. If you can do the introduction section under the title Satan's Temporary Dominion, the last 3 lines are the answer to Brother Jafar's question.
Okay. Satan's temporary dominion. The last. So does Satan rules as this one? God's.
Yeah, it starts with it would take an unmanageable. So it's
okay. Yeah.
it's
Yeah, as it is, the
animal.
animals vastly outnumber the humans on this planet. It would take an unmanageable earth to accommodate. Yeah. It would take an unmanageable earth. That's why I was saying that it would become unmanageable for Satan to have if there were all these bodies also. So it would take an unmanageable earth to accommodate all the repentant rebels, hence the placement of uncountable decillions of creature in outer space. Yeah, mashallah, thanks. Yeah, so it would become hard to manage for Satan if, obviously God could create anything, right? God could create an earth that could fit in all of them. But then it would become difficult for Satan to manage that because there's so many. And then the challenge will become very difficult for Satan, right? So Satan is like thinking that he can manage, so he's given a certain amount of souls, and then obviously some part of it he's made to think that he's winning until the population reaches a certain limit, then he gives up. So, but yeah, if all these other souls, I mean, there's so many more times the amount of souls that are on this earth now, right? So it would be too much for Satan. It would be completely unmanageable for Satan. All right, so that settles that.
Thank you, brother.
All right, and back. Ding. Okay. So, yeah, if you guys have any other comments or questions? Any,
So I have an off-topic question. So there is this older woman, and she's, incapable of, writing her own will. So her daughter wants to assist her with writing the will, but she's illiterate and doesn't, she can't. The older, 85-year-old cannot write. So the daughter wants to help. Do you think that there is, according to the Quran, I don't remember exactly, is there any need for witnesses to that, or can she do that? And then, because she's a submitter, and she knows what's going on in the Quran, and she knows that God is the witness. But I just wanted to know that if the Quran says there is need for witnesses.
right. So let's look at the verse that talks about writing a will. So it says that if, and this is verse 2, verse 80, right? So it talks about, verse 2, verse 180. It says, if it is decreed that when death approaches, you shall write a will for the benefit of the parents and relatives equitably, this is a duty upon the righteous. If anyone alters a will he had heard, the sin of altering befalls on those responsible for such altering. If one sees gross injustice or bias on part of a testator and takes corrective action to restore justice to the will, he commits no sin. God is forgiver, most merciful. So there are people who are testifying to the will, right? So in other words, there are witnesses, but I don't see witnesses being a prerequisite to writing a will, because you can write a will, and let's say you're stuck in the middle of a desert and you're dying, you can write a will, obviously, but if someone finds you at that point and they find your will, that's good, right? So I guess that's maybe the idea behind not necessarily having witnesses, but yeah, if you have witnesses, then sure. I mean, that would safeguard the will, because there are witnesses also that are part of it, and if someone tries to modify it or something like that, then it could safeguard against it. But I don't see that being a requirement. I don't think there's any other verses that even talk about writing a will, but really writing a will is very important, and but we see there's zero zero practice of people doing that in the so-called Islamic world, right? Yeah, people don't even know that they can write a will in that sense, and it's chaos. And they think that, oh, the Quran has said that this is what it should be, this is how the shares are taken, so nobody bothers to write any wills. And then, of course, there is injustice at the end. So,
MashaAllah, thank you.
you're welcome. Yeah, so this lady is old and this woman wants to help her. I mean, she can record it, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought exactly when we talked, that there's always the chance to record, and also, there could be other people present. Even if it is virtual,
Yeah.
still could be other people present. Yes, mashallah.
Yeah. Because it also talks about something that the person has heard, and so yeah,
Yes.
but you can write it for sure. It says write a will. So will, it has to be in writing as well. And it also talks about, there's one area it talks about better witnessing, right? Those ones is for different. Okay, so if there are there any other questions? If not, then God.
No, brother.
Okay, so thank you all for joining us. God willing, our next English Quran study would be on Tuesday at 2 p.m. Pacific time. God bless you all. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you.